So people that work with you every day, they may see you not having a little pep in your step or something like that, or not as positive as you usually are. So they should, be aware of that and try to lift you up in some way. So I think as a team, getting to know each other and connect outside of just the work you're doing, because for like sports, you're coaching a person, not a player. And same thing with people that work in companies. Like, you're not a robot just doing work. Like, yes, we have work to do, but how can we connect, outside of what we're doing and care about each other?
What's up, everybody? This is Paul Critchley, president of New England Lean Consulting. Welcome to another episode of the New England Lean Podcast. As we release this episode, it is Memorial Day here in the United States. So if you are here in the US of A, and we're enjoying an extended weekend, I would ask that you just take a few moments and remember what today is all about. It is to remember and honor the men and women of our armed forces who didn't make it home, as they were wherever they were fighting for our freedoms and our way of life. So please take a few moments and reflect on that and remember those folks. This week, we welcome Dan Horwitz to the show. Dan is one of those guests who's, I'll say, non-traditional for this show. He's a former collegiate basketball player, turned coach, author, and speaker. While playing in college, he was the recipient of the Scholar Athlete Award. He was a 2-year team captain and won the Sportsmanship Award for 3 years. After college, he went on to help coach at Mount St. Mary College in Newburgh, New York. And that's kind of where he developed his appreciation for team building and really leveraged what he got his undergrad in, which was sport management and a minor in psychology. Dan believes in a coaching style that emphasizes building of relationships, empowering others, and encouraging positivity. So again, if you listen to this show, I'm going to believe you're a lean practitioner. All of that is squarely within respect for people, which we talk about on this show often. So that was one of the reasons I was so excited to have Dan on the show, because he comes at this from a different perspective than I think maybe a lot of us do. Certainly, when you read his book, he went on to write a book. It's called Help Them Up, 14 Principles to Educate, Energize, and Empower Your Team to Build a Championship Basketball Culture. Now, I will tell you, you can read this book and have nothing to do with basketball. And when you go through it, you're going to say, these are really leadership methods, traits, culture, all of that kind of stuff, which again, I was so happy when I reached out and Dan said yes to come on the show. So it was a really fun conversation. Dan's a pretty young guy, compared to me, and to talk to somebody, I played basketball in high school and I was awful. I rode the pine. So to talk to somebody, at easily 2 or 3 levels above where I ever got to, it was really interesting. And also because as he's grown and he's kind of been on the coaching side, he really has that perspective to look at it from where I think all of us look at our businesses. So it was really fun, to have him on the show. So as always, I hope you enjoy it and I hope you get something from it. Make it a great week, everybody. I appreciate you. We'll talk to you soon. All right. Welcome to the New England Lean Podcast. My name is Paul Critchley, and I'm really excited. We have a basketball coach with us this week, Dan Horwitz. Dan, how are you?
I'm doing well, Paul. Thank you again for having me today.
Yeah, no, I'm excited that we're finally able to hook up and do this. So I'm gonna relive my high school glory days vicariously through having you on here.
I'm looking forward to it.
But in full disclosure, I was only varsity for 2 years, and we were 4 and 14 both of those years. So I don't have a lot of clout, I think, when it comes to. But what are you gonna do? So anybody that listens to this show, Dan, is, a lot of lean practitioners, leadership kind of stuff. It wouldn't surprise me if they have never heard of you, no offense. But so under that umbrella a little. So if you could maybe just hum a few bars about who you are, where you are, what you do, talk about your book maybe a little bit, and then we'll kind of dive right in.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yep, my name is Dan Horwitz and grew up in West Hartford, Connecticut, and always loved sports growing up, playing with my siblings, and progressed on to playing college basketball at Newburgh College. And that journey was a little interesting. I emailed over 150 schools, and a lot of them more than once, and then 10 replied. Three came and watched me play, and one said yes. So that's how I ended up there. Really enjoyed it, but kind of what you alluded to, our record was 13-87 in my 4 years. So we lost a lot of games, which led me to my love of studying championship teams, and spoke to some of the best coaches in the country for men and women, and love to go to practices and games for anybody that would invite me in. And I wrote a book with 14 principles to help educate, energize, and empower coaches and players to build a championship culture. And I've really enjoyed the feedback I've gotten from that, and hopefully help teams win a few more games. But even if they don't, just to have a great experience. And I also coached in college at the Division III level for 3 years, and played against and coached against, I mean, some really good teams, and just love basketball, love sports, and love leadership. So happy to be able to kind of geek out a little bit on the topic with you.
So, yeah, for sure. And I'm like I said, I was really glad. You and I've been trading emails and stuff for months now. So again, apologies that it took this long, but I've really been looking forward to having you on because, we try to keep it semi-regional. Like you mentioned, you're in West Hartford, Connecticut, just over the river, in Ellington. So, definitely local, kind of local guys. But, like I said, I did play basketball in high school. Admittedly, I wasn't very good. I ended up playing tennis in college of all things, um, which is sort of we did have doubles, but I only played singles. So that's a much different dynamic than, a 5-person basketball team. So I wanted to dive right in. Well, let's start with so what was your record? 13-87?
87, yep, 100 games.
All right. So that's not good, right? That's not
No.
that great. So after you went through that experience, um, how did you make that mental change to say, all right, well, I think we must be doing something wrong, right? Because the metric we have is wins, and that's not where we want it to be. So what made you kind of say, all right, well, let me see what championship teams do? Like, what was it that triggered that thought versus just practicing more, running harder, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one that I probably can speak a lot better now than I could, while I was going through it. But I will preface it by saying that our resources were a little underfunded. Like, we didn't have a basketball gym on campus. So our coach would take a van, and our assistant coach would drive the other van to practice. And so that made it difficult to get, into the gym and things like that. And we were a big commuter school, so some of our guys had part-time jobs. So has some very talented players. I think it was just difficult, competing against teams where kids are there every day and they have the resources. So not making excuses, but we did have our backs against the wall in some regard. But to answer your question, I think playing Amherst College, I think second game of my freshman year, they had won the National Division III championship the year before, and these guys are like 6'5" and up across the board, except for their point guard, who was the reigning Division III player of the year at like 6'2", and they were very good. They were a very good team, and I just like kind of fell in love with like just the team dynamic they had and how well they played together. And it didn't matter who scored; they just found the best person that could score in that moment and played really hard. And the bench players were all engaged and smiling, and it just kind of made me think like, you're kind of comparing your team to theirs, and any team at the Division III level wants to be like them because they had just won the championship. So I think after that, and then our coach, we had he scheduled a lot of really good teams. We played Tufts, we played MIT, I think WPI, and a lot of those teams were ranked when we played them. I won't tell you the scores of them, but it was just great to like see elite level teams compete against each other. So that's kind of where I guess I really just wanted to start studying the best teams. And then being in Boston College, Boston University, Northeastern, and Harvard, they invited me into practice or coaches clinic or game. So just getting to kind of pick their brains and learn was really fun for me. And I like to think that I brought some of it back to our team to try to help improve it as much as I could.
Nice. And from that, is that when did you start thinking about writing a book about this?
That's another very good question. I don't know if I ever really thought about writing a book. Definitely not. I would say the best writer, which is why I hired a company to help edit it and do all that stuff. But in terms of the content, I think it came down to when I decided to get out of college coaching last year, and I just had all these thoughts. And as assistant coach, you don't always get to voice your opinion on everything. And so I just felt like I've picked the brains of some of the best coaches in the country, and they're telling me these, principles, how I categorize it, that every team can do. And yes, it's in sports, in basketball, but it's in other sports and just in business and work teams. Because I have been asked about how it, or told that it translates to the workspace. But I think, yeah, just trying to share my knowledge and being very grateful that so many people had shared what they learned with me. And there were things that didn't require any talent at all. Things like running over and helping up your teammate up off the ground, and huddling up after a shooting foul when all five of the players on the court can decide to go in five different directions and just, communicate, a message where they're not really united, or we can come together and say, hey, we'll get the next one. Let's keep moving forward. And, so little things like that just excite me. And I think any team can implement them. And yeah, so I hope it's had a positive impact on some people that have read it. And I've heard some feedback from some coaches and watching film where they're telling their teams like this, huddle up after a Zoom call we did together. So that made me feel good that, they really took it to heart and made it a part of their culture.
Nice. So, excuse me, I want to jump right in. So, your book is Help Them Up, and I forget what the subtitle is, but it's essentially 14 points of building a championship team.
Yep.
So I know this is like probably, I don't know if you have kids, but when people ask you who's your favorite, right? You can't pick favorites, but do you have a favorite point or a few favorite points or ones that you think are maybe more important than others, that you want to share with, again, the listenership of this show is squarely in business and leadership and, efficiency and engagement and all that kind of stuff. So I'll leave it to you to maybe pick a couple that you want to expound upon.
Yeah, and I'd love to kind of compare it to like the workspace and for companies. And Help Them Up is the title of the book, and I got that from my twin brother Ben, who I love talking about, and I consider him big time because he was working with Syracuse basketball and did that for 6 years. So he was always the first teammate to run over and help up his teammates off the ground, and so I consider that like lifting the spirits of your team. Like, Paul, I've listened to your podcast and know you're a very uplifting and positive guy, and so people that work with you every day, they might see you not having a little pep in your step or something like that, or not as positive as usually are. So they should, be aware of that and try to lift you up in some way. So I think as a team, getting to know each other and connect outside of just the work you're doing, because, for like sports, you're coaching a person, not a player. And same thing with people that work in companies, like you're not a robot just doing work. Like, yes, we have work to do, but how can we connect, outside of what we're doing and care about each other? And so I would say Help Them Up is one of my favorites. I would say Point to the Passer. I think this is great for all teams to do. So say you did a great job, Paul, on a project. It was a team effort, but like you stood out in some way, opposed to maybe me taking the credit. I can point to the passer and share the credit with you and say, Paul did a really good job on this, and he helped with X, Y, and Z. I think that really enhanced our, overall success. And that's a great way to make somebody feel good about their contribution. You're obviously praising a behavior that you'd hope that they continue to do. Maybe you stayed late one day or came early. I know you have two daughters, and maybe you sacrifice 30 minutes to help a colleague get something done, which you never. Sometimes things just come up and you got to help out. So pointing to the passer and acknowledging that means a lot, and people want to feel valued. And then I guess the last one I like them all, but the last one I think that teams can do is accountability circle, which is basically a time at the end of the day, for basketball, it's the end of practice, and we just go around and I could say, like, Ben, you did a really good job today um, helping out our team with energy. Like, you were just bringing positive energy, giving high fives, fist bumps. I call those touches in my book, but just like kind of building that connection. But accountability circle, I could also be like, hey, Ben, today you didn't really run hard. Like, you didn't run back on defense. Same thing on like a work team. Like, maybe it didn't seem like you were fully here today. And so just having that safe space where that dialogue can happen, I think is really important, because it needs to be at the behavior of the person. You're not coming at Ben, coming at Paul, coming at Dan as a person. It's just the behavior that we know you're capable of doing. Maybe you didn't bring it that day. So we just have to have that space where we can have that conversation. Don't take it home with us. And then obviously you have the opportunity to share your thoughts and maybe why you acted the way you did. And that helps the whole team move forward and have that growth mindset. And I think it's a great space if a leader can do that. And I think it's something that all teams really should implement in their own way.
Nice, nice. And I love, so I want to not pick it, that's right. But I want to talk a little bit more about point to the passer. And the reason being, I like that one a lot, because especially in business and, my history, I'll say, we focus on the people who punch it over the goal line. And, I mean, I've been in these meetings, we call them rack and stacks. And thankfully, I don't know anybody that does these anymore. I don't think the previous employer I was at does them. I don't know if you know what these are, but a lot of companies don't do this anymore. But basically, at the time, we took all of the engineers that we had in this company and force ranked them against each other. So it's sort of like the draft, but it's awful, because you basically, these are all employees. So these are all already team members. And it was a horrible experience, and I'd never done one before. And thankfully I've never done one since. But as you were talking about it, and I'm thinking, that's essentially what we were ranking was, you have your A players and the Bs, right? And so on and so forth. And all, whatever moniker you want to add to these things. But I feel like in business, we don't spend enough time pointing to the passer. It's those, like, I don't know if you know the story of Sean Battier. Have you ever
No,
read
but
this?
I'm a big fan of him.
Right. So, and I can't, and you apologies, because I wasn't thinking this was going to come up, although I probably should have. Somebody did a study on all the teams he was on, and he actually, although his statistics weren't all that fantastic, he, like, every team he was on, the overall team statistics got a lot better. And it was because of the fundamental kind of stuff that he would do. He was the passer, right? He was the guy that would set picks. He was, all these things that would enable other things to happen. And in business, quite frankly, we do kind of a crummy job understanding and giving those people accolades. Something I've talked about on this show, and I talk about it in our workshops a lot, where Gallup polls show that 2 out of every 3 workers aren't engaged in their work. And I feel like that may be something that you touch on in your book, might be a big reason why, is because, we're doing all these right things, but because, right, we're not the ones that the project lead, we're not the salesperson that got this, signature on the dotted line, that somehow it's what, not as sexy. We watch, what was the Netflix special on the Bulls, The Last Dance?
The Last Dance, yeah.
Right. So, I mean, essentially it's a documentary on Michael Jordan, right? But, and you probably heard it all the time. Without Scottie Pippen, I don't know if there is a Michael Jordan.
Absolutely.
Right. So how do you use that? Let's, continuing on, how do you use that one? And now that you still coach, right? Just sort of off, as a side thing, you work with certain players, certain teams.
Yep.
How do you make sure that either you do this or you train coaches to recognize those folks who, maybe they're not scoring points, they're getting rebounds, but without them, the rest of the team wouldn't be as good?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great example of Battier. I think he was always willing to do the dirty work, dive on the ground and set screens and knock down open shots. But he's one of those glue guys that you might not see on this scoreboard a ton, but he's doing a lot of things that help the team be successful. So I think that's awesome. For me, I do have the privilege of training a few high school kids and a college kid in like group sessions, so like two at a time. And I tell them the one instruction that I have for you guys is to you, and I'll point to one of them, you be more concerned about his success than you are yours. And I point to the other one and say the same exact thing. And so I say, if you make a shot or you miss a shot, regardless, I want you to be more concerned about your positive talk, which is a principle in the book. And I just say, things like, good job, Paul, or make the next one, or like, let's go, like a all caps, let's go, like we got this. Like sometimes you just need an energy boost. So just being focused with your verbal cues and how you can lift somebody else up during a workout. So we'll do that. And then at the end, we do our little accountability circle. I call it shout outs. And you could basically say anything you want. I was really impressed because I was training a rising junior in high school and a rising junior in college, who's home for after being in college, and he plays. And the high school kid said to him, it's probably our third time working out together, all three of us, and he said, like, I'm really impressed with you for just finishing the workout, because you usually shoot a lot better than you did today, and I could tell you were getting frustrated and the ball was flying all over the place, but you stuck with it. And I don't know if I would have been able to fight through it, but I'm really impressed. And I think that just seeing the college kid's eyes light up, who's supposed to kind of be the leader of the group, and him dealing with adversity, I think that really, it meant a lot to me that we were able to create that safe space where he can say something like that. But I think it meant a lot to the college kid who, despite not playing well, which we can all relate to, not having a great day, he stuck it out and he didn't make excuses and do anything. He just kept working, kept working. And, so a question I kind of have for you is, I talk about the next play mentality, which is through adversity, how do we, or through a success, how do you continue to move forward? So like in your business, when you guys have faced some adversity, maybe with a client or something internally, is there something that you guys do, or a phrase that you guys kind of say to continue to move forward? And I know Kaizen is always improving, and so I'm just kind of curious as to how you guys handle that stuff.
No, that's a good question, and good for you for flipping the script on me. So yeah, I mean, I'm well. You listen to the show, so you kind of know what I'm all about, and I'm all right. And I've said it here. I just like to put positive things into the universe, and hopefully it lands somewhere with somebody. And if I can help make somebody else's day better, then mission accomplished. As far as our business goes, and that's one of the big things I've carried with me away from some of the experiences I had in industry. And I've told those stories, whether here on the show or in workshops. So I won't necessarily reiterate them, but we've all have had bad bosses. Unfortunately, some of us have currently bad bosses. So one of the things I purposely try to do is, we don't win every client, spoiler alert, and we're the only consultant firm anywhere that doesn't win every single client. Cause you talk to anybody else, they're like, oh, we're growing by 300% every year, which is a bunch of baloney. We all know that. Sometimes we just don't, and to your point, a big part of what I try to do as the owner, the founder, the the coach, I guess, of our firm is to say, all right, well, we didn't get that one. We're not going to win them all, but what could we have done differently? What was it? Sometimes, I'll ask clients or, the clients that we lost, well, how come? How come you pick somebody else, or, whatever, maybe. A lot of times they say, well, we're just not ready. We're going to do it later, or, you guys are too expensive, or we just had a better vibe with this other, whatever. It's all kinds of different things. Um, at the core, though, is I think what I try to promote is that our team, like, we can rely on each other. So never, ever are we going to start pointing fingers at each other and say, we would have gotten it if you had done this, or if you had responded sooner or better or whatever. Right. We're not perfect. I don't think I don't think anybody is. But one thing is the relationships we have built on trust and respect. So we can say, just like you did, hey, I noticed that this didn't go great or whatever. So what's going on? I noticed you're not your regular self. Is everything okay? And yeah, I understand we lost this client or whatever happened, or we had a bad whatever. You had a training and you get some bad feedback from some people, you know, at the core, they know we all have each other's back. So we'll rebound, we'll get back from it, and we'll regroup and do better next time. Um, I never want our culture to be one of finger pointing and dissatisfaction and all that stuff, because at the end of the day, it's right. We're only here for that. We're only here to help customers bring more value to their customers. That's what our jobs are. Um, so I don't know if that was kind of a long-winded answer, but I don't know that's kind of what we do. And I feel like, having chatted with you before we got on before, I think similar. Is that kind of your messaging?
Yeah, I mean, I love that you say the words trust and respect, because as a leader, if you're trying to put in positivity into the world and you're focused on trust and respect and having each other's back, then like your team by default is gonna either get on the bus or they're not gonna be a good fit. And so I think when the leader like yourself is driving home those messages and that's what you're praising, those type of things, I think then teams have a fighting chance no matter what to get through adversity and be successful, whatever that means for for that specific team. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no, thank you for asking. I mean, technically, right? I love the fact that that's what this show is. It's just a conversation. I never want this to be an interview. That's, I don't know. It's just not my thing. So thanks for asking.
Of course.
Another thing. So a lot of, kind of your messaging, I think, is squarely in what in lean terms, we would call respect for people. And that's where I get the trust and respect thing, because again, I've had bad bosses and it's not fun. I've driven to work and not felt good when I got there, just because, like I've said here before, I know I'm going to get yelled at for something that probably I have nothing to do with. And then it's going to be my problem. And it's interesting to me now that I have a little bit different perspective, because one of the statistics I quote a lot, again, is from Gallup. And that is, COVID notwithstanding, everything's a little wonky right now. But prior to that, 3.5 million Americans quit their job every single month, which is crazy when you
Wow.
think about it, because there's a roughly 125 million people working full time. So if you assume that we don't have any repeats month to month to month, that's what, almost 40 million people change jobs every year. So it's like a third of the workforce. So we have full turnover every 3 to, I don't know, call it 4 years. You think about the waste that's associated with that. And I feel like a lot of your messaging would help. And again, I'll go to back to point to the passer. It's just little minor tweaks that I think we can make in business that we could avoid a whole heck of a lot of costs associated with losing good people. So I wanted to ask you, in your experience, have you had a player that's quit or that had to get cut or something like that? And how did that go down?
Well, I definitely had some teammates in college transfer out, just because they, for different reasons. Sometimes it's academics, they're not doing what they need to do in the classroom, and as like you played at Clarkson, so you're a student athlete, as every student athlete is, but especially the Division III level. You're there to get a degree and set yourself up for your career. Probably don't have a super high chance of playing pros or overseas or something like that. So
No, not that was not in my career path, unfortunately.
yeah, so yeah, I think it's honestly comes down to the player's decision. I think a lot of times we had a player that very talented player, but they just weren't able to control their emotions on the court. When things didn't go well, that next play mentality just didn't do a great job of being able to persevere through that. And I think as teammates, we all wanted it to work out because this player was really good, and they actually just decided to quit once. And we had a players meeting because they asked that player asked if the coach if they could come back. And we did welcome them back. And I think it went well for about a month, and then it kind of went back down that same type of thing where it's just too frustrating and they don't want to be a part of it. But, as a teammate, I try to think about it as a leader and coach, like how could I have tried to help that situation? Like you said, you don't get a client, like what could we have done better? And I kind of took it personally because I felt like I spent a lot of time with that player and trying to help keep them afloat and having joy. Steve Kerr for the Warriors talks about joy, and you watch Steph Curry always smiling and playing, and I love the word joy, and that's like what we should feel every day. And so that was a tough situation that didn't work out. But I still talk to that teammate now, and so I think it's for all of us, for a teammate that's struggling in that regard, maybe they don't have the best resources growing up or support system. So if we can help bridge that gap and encourage them and find out ways to motivate them, I think that's really important. So it's unfortunate it happens, like you said, people move on, but if we can do our part, I think that's important. Just being a great teammate.
Yeah, we had Brian Carney, who's a former Navy SEAL, on the show, and he talked a lot about, and I forget what the numbers were, but in his class through buds, I'll use round numbers. It was like 250 guys started, and I think by the end they graduated 12.
Wow.
Right, so it's high failure rate. And one of the statistics I'd always read about the SEALs was something along like what you said, where when they decide to quit, there's a bell that they have to go up and they have to ring it. Well, along the way, if somebody says, "I'm done, I quit," they may or may not have folks trying to talk them out of it. And Brian confirmed that 100% of the time, if somebody decided to quit and then they get talked out of it, they eventually quit.
Mm.
He's like, it never failed, because once you make that decision, it was already over, whether you ring the bell that day or the next or a week later. And so I'm just wondering with that player, and like you said, who knows? Humans are infinitely variable. And their management of people is an extremely difficult job, and leadership, very difficult. And those that really get it right, really kind of, it's an art form almost. But one of the things you said too, I wanted to ask you about. 'Cause I think one of your points is focus on the next play. Is that right?
Yeah, but next play mentality.
Next play
Yep.
mentality.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about that. And again, let me set it up. So the reason is, again, I feel like in business, a lot of times we sometimes will get wrapped around the axle on the failures. As a career manufacturing engineer, that was basically my job, was to look at things critically and try to figure out, how is this not going to work before it doesn't work, so we can go fix it. And we, as engineers, especially in an aerospace industry, which was the bulk of my career, it's you hone that so sharply that it's really hard to turn that off everywhere else in life. So how do you help guys who get stuck on, I'm 0 for 5 shooting today? Like, how do you get them to just like slough that off quickly and get back to it? Because you only have so much time, right? The game's only so long. And in business too, the day's only so long. We're only going to be working for X amount of time. We have deadlines, all that kind of stuff. How do you help people get through that?
Yeah, I think you have to do it. It's day by day, and week by week and month by month. You have to be very intentional. I think with practice, it really starts with practice and putting your team, like you just kind of said, with the SEALs, like in adverse situations where they're probably going to fail. So like an example of a basketball analogy would be putting 5 guys on one team and 5 guys on the other, and making one team starting with 10 points and they're playing to 15. So to make a 3-pointer and a layup and the game's over. And how do those five players react? Do they just give up? Do they fight? Do they come together, huddle up, say like, let's control it one play at a time? And the thing about basketball is that like there's going to be so many mistakes. And I think for athletes that put themselves out there, like every time you shoot a ball, there's a chance you fail. There's a very good chance you fail. But kind of having the courage to try anyways, knowing that that's part of improving and the growth process is really important. So in practice, just putting your plays in situations where they can fail, and then having that feedback accountability circle at the end and talk about what do we do well, what can we do better, and then just keep, every day, just keep doing that and watching game film. I think that's like a great thing for basketball teams, is that they can watch film. And for me, when I think next play mentality, I think of a player driving the ball, getting fouled, but not getting a call. And then that moment, like you said, when they go and ring the bell, they've decided that they're going to tap out. So do you stop and put your hands up, and complain about the ref and jog back and let your team get scored on? Or do you sprint as hard as you can, point, talk, get in front of that defender, talk through the whole play, finish with a box out, get the ball, and then go sprint back down? Like, there's two differences. And honestly, Paul, like when you're talking about trust and respect, like you're the kind of coach and leader that like your players be programmed to do that. And the coach, the coach that doesn't lead the way you do, he'll be yelling at the refs, and the player will be doing the same thing. So you kind of see a correlation between the leader who's controlling the playing time, and the coach. So I just think that if it's a known behavior that's expected, and not every player is gonna have that, but it takes no talent to sprint back on defense, and it takes no talent to get rejected by a client, and then you pick up the call and you call somebody else. You know what I mean? And it's okay to feel your emotions and have that moment, but you can't let it affect what's next, because there is always something that you can be doing, and that yes is coming after that no. It just might not be as fast as you want it. So that's what I think about with the next play mentality.
Nice. Yeah, I can't take full credit for that one. I had a boss at Pratt Whitney here in East Hartford, and that was one piece of advice he gave me that stuck with me. He's like, don't let them see you hanging your head. Because there were times, I mean, there were some days, and he's like, you can do that. Don't let them see you. Don't let your people see you do that. He's like, you have to be essentially the positive one. You have to be the guy that says, all right, listen, that didn't go great, or whatever happened. Let's huddle up, figure it out, make sure it doesn't happen again next time. And that's it. That's over and done with and moving on. And that's even like Tom Brady. I don't know if you read TB12 or any of that fun stuff, but he talks a lot about that too. It's like, listen, it is what it is, and you can be unhappy, but what are you gonna, and we've seen it. Like you watch, we probably watch sports as much as each other, right? And you could sometimes see it basically, you argue with the ump or whatever. It's like, it's not going to work. We actually in high school, we had our basketball coach chase one of the referees into the bathroom at halftime. And he, of course, got ejected. And we went on to lose that game by 30 some odd point. I forget. It was a train wreck. But it's like, why? I don't know. It sets a bad tone. And you never see like Gino Auriemma do that. At least not that I can remember. Right. And he's got, what is he, second in the all-time wins list?
Yeah, I think he's second. Yeah.
So to your point, it's like you got to lead by example, right? Mm-hmm. And you kind of set the tone. So,
and I one other point to go on, to add to that is like I studied the two best Division III women's or men's and women's teams, and their coaches like are just very poised, and I'm not saying they don't ever yell at the refs, but they're a lot more. They're controlling what they can control, and if anything, they're like probably complimenting the ref, saying like you're doing a good job and things like that, which may or may not help you get calls, but it's just the right way to act. And I try to think of it like, why is it okay to talk to a person like that just because you're standing on a sideline on a basketball court or on a field, or a bit, something like that? Just like in the grocery store, you're not going to talk to somebody like that. So like, why is it okay to yell and berate somebody and demean them when like you could just have a conversation? Like, I think it's important to get the names of the refs as well. Like, don't just yell ref or something like that. Like, hey, Paul, like, can you just tell me what you saw there? Because I thought my player got fouled. Mm-hmm. Like, that's, I think, more effective than yelling and making a big scene. And then your players are always watching you as a leader of how you're reacting to those situations.
Right. And you could look at Bobby Knight, right? I mean, he had a very, air quotes, successful career right up until he didn't anymore. And you look at how he acted, and it's, it's always not amazing, but it was always interesting to me. I'm like, if I was that good of a high school player, I don't think I'd want to play. I know I wouldn't want to play for a person like that. Yet at the same time, you're like, well, geez, I can go D1 and he's got the pedigree. Like, I know if I go there, I have a pretty good shot at getting, my stats up. Maybe I get drafted, all that stuff. So you put right. I think he put his players in that position to have to choose. And I think again in business we do a lot of that kind of stuff too, where it's like, well, you can work at, corporation XYZ and we have a great reputation, but in order to do that and get paid more maybe here than somewhere else, you're going to get screamed at 3 or 4 times a week, and that's just the way it is. That's not okay. It's like, no, that's not the way that this is supposed to work. Right? Same team. So how about we lift each other up instead of tearing each other down? Right? What a concept.
That was a great example. And sometimes people feel like they need to, put themselves in those positions, and hopefully, people like us and other like-minded people are doing their part to try to create those positive environments.
Well, let's hope. It takes, right? We're just going to keep plugging away.
Yeah.
So, Dan, I do like to take a little break away from the air quotes formal part of the podcast and play a game I call the wicked fun part. If you're up for it.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
All right. I'll let you take a drink. This is going to be rough. So buckle up. No, I'm kidding. I'm just teasing.
I'm excited for this.
What do you think about when you're alone in your car?
Alone in my car. Well, I like car rides when I can put cruise control on and I'm just going straight, not in traffic or anything like that. But I honestly, I just like to let my thoughts wander, and a lot of times I'll end up listening to a podcast, something like, something that's talks about leadership or team, and get my thoughts going in that regard. But yeah, definitely like a good drive where you can just relax and look at the road and kind of just slow things down a little bit.
Fair point. Here's one I was looking forward to asking you. What were you like in high school?
In high school, I like to think I was pretty quiet. I loved sports, and so I played football, basketball, and baseball my freshman year. So pretty busy with school and sports. And then after my freshman year, I just played basketball year round. But I would say that a really good friend group. We like to play this wall ball game with a tennis ball against after lunch we just go do that, and just a good group of guys that I think we're I'm still friends with today. And I wouldn't say we were like super popular or anything like that. Just guys that just were, like I said, just nice, and kids I grew up with. And I think more in college is kind of when I was able to find my voice, and that leadership stuff that kind of inspires me today is kind of like where that developed. So I'm grateful for both experiences.
Nice. Oh, here's one for you. What's the funniest thing that's happened to you recently? And you got to have some good stories if you work in a high school and a middle school.
Oh yeah, no, the middle school kids come in every day. The 6th graders especially. Well, there's one student that always like asks these like just very interesting questions. I'm kind of blanking on the spot, to be honest, but it's just like things like he said something like in some country, if your name is I can't even think of it right now, but you get like free sushi or something like that. Like if your name, so he's like, I think it was like salmon or something. If your name was salmon, you get free sushi. And like I think we looked it up and it was true, whatever country it was or whatever the name was. But just little things like that, and they definitely keep you on your toes and make me laugh all the time. So I don't think I have a great story on the spot, but I'm sure tomorrow something will happen. I'm like, oh, I should have said that on Paul's podcast.
I do the same thing. And you're right. I mean, my kids are one's in high school, one's in middle school, but yeah, some of the stuff they come up with, it's like, and I can't even imagine. I just have the 2. If you're around a few hundred, I can't even imagine the stuff that comes up in any particular day.
Yeah, no, I enjoy it. Definitely enjoy the kids.
How about what's one thing nobody knows about you that you're
One thing
willing to
nobody knows.
share that people are now going to know?
um, well, yeah, I did ask you to send some of these questions before, so I was able to think about this one a little bit. I think my family would know this, but I don't know why it came to mind. But I do have 3 freckles on my arm. You can see it. But sometimes I'll take a pen and I'll make a smiley face because it has 2 dots and a nose. So I just thought that was like sometimes I'm trying to make people smile. I just do a little line, do myself a little pen tattoo, and that's what came to mind for something that people probably don't know about me unless they saw it, then obviously they would. But try to keep the mood light and keep people smiling, and yeah, and I think like for me, like doing little things like holding the door open for people and asking how they're doing and saying please and thank you and asking how they're doing, but genuinely wait, not just saying hi and walking by, but listening. So I think that's just kind of like, the smiley face is just my way of trying to spread the positive vibes.
And that's, I always say levity doesn't hurt, right? And you know, yes, like we, deal with clients, or when I was in industry, yes, the products that we make are important and that's how the business makes money. But I always used to say too, we're not open, we're not doing brain surgery,
Hmm.
we're not saving lives here. So maybe just pump the brakes, let's, and drawing a smiley face in your arm to get somebody to smile and loosen up a little. I mean, yeah, it might seem silly, but it probably on a, molecular chemical level probably gives us some endorphins that maybe who knows, right? But
Hmm.
I mean, I think that works a whole heck of a lot better than yelling, screaming, pounding fists, throwing things, all that ridiculousness.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think one of my favorite quotes just going off that is like, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And I just think that's, leading from with that perspective in mind, I think can help your team overall success a lot more than, you know, letting your brain be the only one that's really making the decisions opposed to, 10 or 15 on the team. Because, great ideas come from anywhere. So that's a quote I really love.
Yeah, and that's as I mean in lean, that's absolutely true. Continuous improvement. We all, because it is the truth. It's the people who are doing the work know the best. They are the experts. The management team, yeah, sure, smart people, absolutely. But the people who run that piece of equipment, who are doing that process 8, 9 hours a day, 5, 6 days a week, they, we can't compete with them. They know this stuff. It's up to us to, pull that information out of them because maybe they don't think about it the same way we do. But that's back to your point. We all have a role to play in the team dynamic, and it's up to us to try to fill all those roles.
Yeah.
Last one. What profession other than your own would you like to try to do?
Sorry for if you're gonna hear a dog barking.
That's okay.
Um, one profession that I'd want to do if I wasn't, doing what I'm doing. As a kid, I wanted to be a vet, just because I love animals. And but then I found out that if they're sick and they can't help them, you have to put them down. So that kind of changed my perspective. I guess that got more of like a first type of dream job. But just like that, I mean, my mom works as a director of nursing and takes care of people. So I think just having the skill set to help make people have a comfortable experience, but also recover and get back to their normal, I think is something that above my I'm sure maybe I could do it in some regard, but I just have a lot of respect for healthcare workers and people that basically are just servant leaders and do everything they can to help others.
Nice. Nice. So, Dan, we have just a few minutes left. Is there anything that we didn't cover that, thoughts from your book or things that you've thought about since then that you kind of wanted to share with everybody?
I think just in terms of trying to leave, obviously the call feeling good and stuff. I just think it's really important to, like we've talked about, lift others up. And I heard the phrase recently, relentless optimism. And I'm wearing a shirt that says positive warrior that a a friend of mine sent to me, and I just think that everybody is a leader in regard to having influence. That's how I define leadership, is just having influence, and your actions and words do matter. And if especially now, things are, times are tough, and just reaching out to somebody, if you read something, hear something that makes you think of them, or just somebody you haven't talked to, I think taking the time to send them a text or calling them, could really mean a lot. And I think that there doesn't need to be a reason to call somebody, and maybe it's a little uncomfortable, a little awkward. And I think, things happen in life, or, something tragic. And then you start to think, and I just think that every day is a privilege and special. And we should do what we can to make others feel, special, because everybody is. And I'm just grateful to be able to connect with somebody like you, who's like-minded, and, a lot of positivity, and, taking the time out of your day to try to spread positivity all over for your listeners. So again, thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, Dan, anytime. I'm like I said, I love what you just said too. I mean, it takes no time just to say, like you said, send a quick text, or just please and thank you. I mean, nanoseconds, yet they can have such a huge impact. And I don't know, society, I don't know. It's a little too philosophical for this show, I guess, but I don't know. I don't know. I'm not going to say that we've lost it. But I think we could certainly use more of it.
Be the change.
Yeah, there you go. All right, Dan, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us. If people want to find you, do you have a website? Where can they reach you?
Yeah, danhorwitz.com, DanHorwitz. Twitter, Dan Horwitz 1. And happy to connect with anybody that wants to, just maybe you or I said something that resonated and just wants to have a conversation or message back and forth. And just grateful to anybody that listened to it and got this far. And thanks again, Paul.
All right, Dan. So I'll link to all that in the show notes so people can hit you up there.
All
and
right.
I'll throw a link to your book. I'm assuming is on Amazon, like everything else that we buy now.
Yeah, this just helped them up. That's also on my website, and there's a link to it on my Twitter, and I'm also on LinkedIn as well. So
Okay.
Definitely pretty easy to find. And like I said, just happy to help in any way I can.
Awesome. All right, Dan, I'll let you get to it. Thanks again.
Thank you.
All right. See ya.
Bye.
Next week on the season finale of the New England Lean podcast.
I do believe that work shouldn't be a place where we have to suffer at all. It should be a place of renewal in a weird way, growth, development, and you can have it all. If you're the CEO of a company listening to this, you can have it all. You can have great profit, really happy people, and amazingly satisfied customers.